In this episode, Tom and Megan take up Spider-Man-Far From Home. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Megan Dougherty for the award-winning, because that's what heroes do. We took a slight detour into Star Trek The Next Generation in our last podcast, but we're back on the MCU for the first of two consecutive Spider-Man movies. The first one is Far From Home. So Megan and I have already laid out the synopsis, and now we're going to move to our thoughts. Where do you want to start?
I would like to start, please, right at the beginning of the movie with that absolutely epic Tony Stark tribute video. Because it was so perfect. It makes me remember my early high school, I think grade 9 AV class, where you learn the very basics of video editing and you have to make your little animations, learning all of the different functions of the video editor. It was perfect. It was great. And I love the student talking about how they're adapting to being back after the blip and not really understanding what's going on and feeling like in some way the adults in their lives have let them down terribly, which I think is probably accurate. It was so realistic and so relatable, and that carried, I think, through the entire movie.
I got a completely different sense.
Tell me your sense.
Teen angst. Stupid boys. The girls always know everything. They always kiss you first. All you got to do is show some interest, man up, and they're right there just waiting for you to kiss them, and you never do, and they kiss you first, and then, it's all. So I'm always intrigued by that. Having to watch that again is just so painful.
I think it was so, like, you're cringing, I think, on behalf of the kids, because, oh, I was there. Sounds like you were there. We've all been there.
We've all been there. Not that we would ever have a cross-cultural reference, but in Star Wars, when Han Solo says, women always know. So girls always know. That's what I thought of. But there was so much in this.
Chicanery and lies.
Yeah. This was a great travelogue. Love Venice. My wife loves Venice, so we love seeing Venice. That was very cool. Walking into a flooded hotel. The first time we went to Venice, in the middle of the night, I hear alarm go off, and I thought, oh, there's a fire, honey, we got to get out of here. And she goes, oh, don't worry, it's high water alarm. And so I walked down to the lobby the next morning, and it's up to my hips.
I would worry about a high water alarm. That does not sound comforting to me.
We learned about Venice pretty quick, but Venice, and then Mysterio was, I thought, a great villain. Really interesting dynamics going on there that perhaps we can get into. Aunt May and Happy, the adult mirror of MJ and Peter, obviously a little further along and advanced, whatever you might want to call it. But that was fun to watch too. I even liked the monsters that Mysterio was
really cool.
Acting or pretending to destroy were the four elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. So I thought that was cool. The Nick Fury dynamic in there, it was so, I don't think the acting or his focus changed from any of his movies. He's all about the mission. He's all about protecting Earth. But that was his single role in that movie. And so we saw it as starkly as we could. He didn't care what Peter was going through. He didn't care that he was about to profess undying love to the first love of his life. He didn't care about Aunt May. He didn't care about Happy. He cared about protecting the Earth. And it was so clear, you either in or you're out, Parker. And then the reveal at the end with the Krull was just way too cool. The Edith AI, oh boy, talk about presaging Chat GPT this week. I just read an article in the New York Times where the tech editor said she was creeped out by the chatbots. I
am creeped out by the chatbots. I do not think the world needs an Edith. I do not think we need a Skynet. I think.
So all of that was just the whole storyline. And then, of course, having it in Europe, I just love a travelogue to Europe. Prague is a gorgeous city if you've never been there. London is my favorite city on earth. So anytime I can see those, admittedly with a lot of CGI, but all of that was just way too cool.
I've been to the Netherlands. I've been to the Netherlands, and they are, in fact, very nice.
Very nice in the Netherlands. And then we got to see Berlin. A lot in there. What were your thoughts on the overall?
Oh, the overall plot I thought was pretty heartbreaking. They did not pull any punches in terms of trying to make us feel things. Peter Parker is in this process of grieving and this equally emotionally intense process of successfully having a relationship with a human female his own age. But he's lonely. Aunt May is a little overbearing, as much as she is loving, and he's lost his father figure. His father figure is gone and has given him the keys to the kingdom. And then his new father figure, Daddy Mysterio, shows up. And looking back at everything that happened after watching it the first time, you're like, oh, okay, there were a bunch of red flags that went on here. I just wanted him to have a dad so much that I was completely willing to buy that Mysterio was real and was going to take Peter under his wing. And I thought Peter's desire to have that help, that authority, who was a lot nicer to him than Nick Fury ever was. So when it ended up turning around, I thought that was pretty heartbreaking.
I don't know why, but I had completely forgotten the whole Mysterio backstory about they were all ex-employees from Tony Stark's company. And
great choice.
Yeah.
Great choice. Who hasn't had that boss? He must have been awful to work for.
It made me realize, or made me think about, all of those people were just a little bit twisted. And Twitter today, maybe? I don't know. But they were.
As much as he wants to be, Elon Musk is not Tony Stark.
He's not Tony Stark. And all of those employees followed Mysterio voluntarily.
He was supposed to say, you leave your manager, not your job. And I guess you follow your manager too, not your...
So all of that was cool, interesting. The battle scenes were just great.
Oh, they were so good.
As I said, the London Bridge was great. I really enjoyed it. Any more thoughts on the overall plot?
Overall plot, I thought the tech was really cool. I thought Peter's growing in power and then ultimate kind of sacrifice of power was immensely to his credit. And that happening immediately before the big kind of bad guy reveal. Absolutely brutal. I almost found some of the subplots were more fun. I loved all of the more minor characters. May and Happy, as you mentioned at the beginning. Hilarious. Ned and Bonnie, I think?
Betty,
not Bonnie. Amazing. I absolutely adored them. And of course, Peter and MJ. I love the chemistry that they have together. I love their honesty with each other. And I love that they're both giant nerds. And that was great.
Apparently, I don't know if it was this movie or the one before, they had a torrid affair that they have continued. And I think that that personal chemistry showed up in the screen chemistry.
Well, good for them. I hope they're very happy.
They were very good. But let me pick up on Ned and Betty. Because that, to me, was perhaps the more realistic high school romance.
It was so obnoxious and so perfect.
It's so perfect. And when you get opposites like that, who've been teasing each other, particularly boys would tease girls like that forever. And then you wake up one weekend and, you're in love with them. And they're just the perfect one.
And then the girl... Betty started off as this snobbish type of person you think she's not going to be very... She's actually a sweetheart who's really kind to people in her life. Love that reveal. The anti-mean girl. I think it's great.
And then she ran the whole show, and he was just her puppy dog until it was over. And, we're adults. All things must end. We've moved on.
That part, I think, was a little less realistic, because if I remember breakups between the ages of, say, 15 and 18, they weren't so pretty.
Typically they were very high drama. Very high drama. Let's move to some cookies, because they were delicious throughout. But I guess the thing that struck me about this movie, as much or more than any of the other MCU, the things that you and I talk about as cookies were really plot points and kind of right up front. And for me, Jameson, the publisher of the newspaper where Peter used to work, I guess he still works, he's been after Spider-Man. That was a significant plot point at the end of the movie when Mysterio wrongly accuses Peter of killing him, and then they unmask him and out him. But anytime I could see Jameson, I loved him in the comic books, I loved him in the cartoon, and I've loved him in the Spider-Man movies. That was great. The Aunt May working in the charity to help feed homeless and underprivileged, I thought was pretty cool. I thought MJ toned down a little the intellectual firepower that we saw in the last one. And her in reading and preparing for this podcast, it talked about her backstory from the comics as coming from a very dysfunctional home. And that in the comics, that's why she developed this sort of rigorous shell to keep people away. And they said that translated to the movies by her basically being the most intelligent, sarcastic wit on the planet who would put anybody down anytime and always be right. And we saw that a little bit, but that shell melted away as she and Peter got closer.
Oh, exactly. And I think, and we'll talk about this more, I think, in the next episode, where we're talking about the next Spider-Man movie, but that sort of armor of misanthropy is, I find, really familiar. I've definitely got friends who are like that. I had friends in high school who were like that. I wished I was as cool as them. Was not. But I think she was great, and she really, fantastic actor, Zendaya, to be able to convey all that and to be so appealing. Yeah, 10 points.
10 points. What I couldn't remember is this movie was released in 2017, but it takes place after Tony Stark dies.
Yeah, I think right after the blip. I think maybe it's the movie that comes immediately after, or Multiverse was first?
It's the first one after the blip, but all the guys are back.
Yeah.
And Nick Fury has almost a throwaway, which I think he says there aren't supposed to be Kree sleeper cells on Earth. And then, of course, the reveal at the end where the Kralls are impersonating Nick and his assistant really gave me a level of complexity around not simply the Captain Avenger story, but the timeline as well, and how the Kralls had been co-opted into, maybe co-opted is too strong a word, but certainly become allies of the Terrans here on Earth. And the Krees were still going to be a problem.
Intergalactic supervillain's gonna intergalactic supervillain, I guess. I love the idea that you can never actually know that who you're talking to or who you're seeing is who you're seeing. I think that makes it really fun. And I think it doesn't necessarily mirror like the secret identities that some superheroes like Spider-Man have, but I think it does add sort of a tension to everything that you see, and you can never actually be sure what it is that's going on.
So I really enjoyed this movie. It was a great travelogue. It had great action, as always with any MCU movie. The technical fireworks and whiz-bang is just over the top and first rate. I really enjoyed it. Any sort of final thoughts?
I think in one of the kind of the main boss fight towards the end, when with all of these illusions and holograms and the drone action, I think it really brings through again, you can't trust anything that you see from this point on. Whether or not that's a character that you know and love who's being impersonated, or whether it's the villain that you're trying to fight that is actually a drone projection, the stakes are high and we just don't. So I think that's going to continue.
And I think that becomes much more true when we go to our next episode, which is Spider-Man No Way Home, and we meet the multiverse.
Time to meet the multiverse.
So I'm Tom Fox, and you are?
Megan Dougherty.
We look forward to chatting with you again.
Bye-bye.
This is Tom Fox. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Because That's What Heroes Do. I hope you will join Megan and I again in our next episode where we take up Spider-Man No Way Home. Because That's What Heroes Do is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network.